Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Zhang again. I am an internal medicine hospitalist and a prior researcher. Currently, I am in the COVID unit, and this week I had 18 patients admitted to hospital for COVID. My impression is that although the number is still high, but the severity of disease is not as bad compared to the Delta strain. And the scientists already started predicting how the pandemic will end. And some people say that pandemic will be over by, say, this summer. And some people will say that the pandemic will become endemic and come back each winter. I want to provide my own opinion about this. And before we start, please hit the subscribe button so I can prepare more content for you. Your support is everything for me. Let's start. For the last 2 weeks, Omicron has been burning through the world like a giant fire. But look at the UK data, and they came very fast and they faded pretty quickly. Currently, the UK data did show that the Omicron is almost over. So there is a reason for us to be optimistic. And but if we predict the pandemic will be end, that's too premature. But I can safely say that we will have a good summer and we will reach herd immunity by summertime, and we may be able to travel again. But the key is whether Delta or Omicron will come back. And there's good news and bad news. So let's look at the good news. And in the first article, looks like Omicron has a very high infection rate and less hospitalization and death. So I also had the same impression in my practice, and it looks like people are dying less, and even the number of infections is very high, and reported number now is approaching 1 million. But given some people may have no symptoms, and some people may have mild symptoms, but they don't have test kit. So I think that the actual infection may be 2 or 3 times more than 1 million. Let's look at the article number 2. So that's another good news, is that this is a lab test, not in animals or humans. But it looks like the Omicron is more likely to infect the upper airway cells and less likely to infect the lung cells. That might be explained why we have fewer patients has a respiratory failure or need a hospitalization or need intubation. And so with this kind of research, and we found out, the Omicron burns through the population so fast, and they are mild, and it's a good chance we can reach herd immunity even in later February or March. Now let's look at some potential concerning complications. And the first one is in the news, and there is a new strain identified called the IHO. And that seems to have more mutations than Omicron. And there's a concern that it may overtake Omicron and become a dominant strain. Is that so? Unlikely. That has to do with the structure of the virus. So the disease severity is dependent on how well the virus can enter the cells. And there is a receptor binding domain in the virus spike protein. It binds to ACE receptor to facilitate the viral entry into cells. In that aspect, Delta strain had a perfect configuration of the receptor binding domain, and it enters the cell mostly efficiently, and that making it the most virulent of all COVID virus strains. And look at the domain, it only has 6 amino acids. And any mutation to it definitely going to reduce significantly the entry of the virus into the cells. And the domain also rely on surrounding amino acids to stabilize the configuration. So as a result, more mutation into the S protein will affect their configuration and making less likely to be lethal and cause severe diseases. That is why Omicron is now causing less hospitalization and death, and even more mutations probably going to make it even weaker in the future. what about the infection in the wild animals? After all, this COVID originated initially from the wild animal, bats. And there's a reason to suspect that the animals may harbor this virus and come back to us and get more infection. Is this likely? This paper tells about it. And animals can be divided into three categories. One is the host. The host of the virus, they do not get sick, and the virus can live there forever. This is a situation with the bats. Second category is a reservoir. So reservoir animals does not cause disease or only has mild symptoms, but eventually they go away. This explains some reptiles such as snakes and some other animals are listed here. As another group of animals, they are susceptible like humans, and they get sick, they die, or they get better. So most of this group are mammals. In domestic animals like pigs and chickens, there is no evidence they can get infected. Actually, they are quite resistant to it, so that's not a concern. What about wild birds? And we know that wild birds harbor different COVID virus, including alpha, beta, gamma, and all kinds of virus. But so far, I did a Google Scholar search, and I did not see any reports about the birds carrying COVID-19. So probably animal is not a big concern. This article talking about COVID virus found in the sewage. We know that the virus does not survive well on the surface. They die in hours without, if they're not in an aerosol. But in the sewage, it's widespread. It's everywhere. So is that a concern? No, it's not a concern at all. So RNA virus cannot survive in the sewage environment. So our sewage was mixed with detergent such as SDS, EDTA, and all these molecules, they puncture holes in the viral lipid bilayer. They can also denature their surface protein. Plus, the RNA enzyme called RNase are universal, so they chop down the RNA genome pretty quickly. There's no study about it. I would not think they can survive this kind of environment in a few minutes in a soil. Now look at the bad news. So, we really cannot know we can eliminate the COVID at all. So history tells us we are unable to eliminate any virus in our environment. They come, they stay with us, and they stay us probably forever. Only hope is that they become a milder form, so we can coexist with them, and they only cause seasonal cold symptoms. But it's not a guarantee. And there is a number two problem is that eliminate the virus take a global effort. And currently 1/4 of Asian population, if they are under strict quarantine, and the virus really do not get involved. So in that local, if it's endemic, not a pandemic because they only infect a few people, we still will see Delta strain. Even I assume that even Alpha strain is still there, and these strains, it can come back. And let's take a look by winter time. See, our last infection has been over like 8 or 9 months already. So we know the immunity to infection or even to vaccine waned pretty quickly. So by that time, the whole world is susceptible again. So if there is a Delta or Alpha or Beta, even that kind of strain come back, we can have a pandemic again. And another problem is long COVID. And do not take lightly for mild COVID symptoms, because a study has showed that symptom after COVID called long COVID symptom does not correlate with severity of disease. For the Omicron, we really don't know. I mean, a lot of we still don't know. And first, we don't know how bad is the viral load. And we don't know the COVID Omicron will invade every organ system like the Delta. And we don't know people will have a chronic inflammation from this. So I would say that we should avoid the infection if it's a mild form, if we can. Unfortunately, it may not be even possible. And I think the majority of us eventually will get the virus with or without the vaccine. That's the bad news. And another bad news is now we see COVID in kids. Children get admitted to the hospital and are put on a ventilator. This have never happened before. I mean, even it's not in this scale. I don't know this is truly a worsening situation or this is just because of numbers. And only time can tell. I think about that. If we have 1 million infected person with symptoms, 2 or 3 million without symptoms or mild symptoms, and with the percentage of children get sick may not be much different than the previous Delta strain. Only time will tell. So my suggestion is that still be conservative and protect yourself if you go out. Thank you for listening.